Hello, my name is Dylan, and today the homicide case I chose to present is the John Wayne Gacy case, also known as the Killer Clown. He was born March 17th, 1942 in Chicago, Illinois. Ultimately, he moved to Iowa and had a wife and started a new life altogether. People describe him as a friendly man who liked to dress up as his alter ego, Pogo the Clown, to entertain children. But the first warning about Gacy came in 1964 when he was guilty of sodomizing two young boys. He got arrested and spent 18 months in prison. When he got released, he was divorced and decided to move back to Chicago. He revived his life as he had a successful construction business, remarried, and was also volunteered as a Democratic precinct captain in his area, as well as hosting block parties for his neighborhood. One day in July of 1975, a teenager had disappeared who worked for Gacy's construction business. The parents were pleading with the police officers to look into Gacy about the case, but they never did. The next year, Gacy divorced again, and he had a feeling of personal freedom finally. He began to rape and kill young men over a period of a few years. A young man A young man went to Chicago police in 1977 claiming he had been kidnapped and molested by John Gacy. The police officers made a report about it, but they never followed up on it. The next year, Gacy murdered a 15-year-old boy who had went to Gacy's house to inquire about a construction job at his business. This time, Des Moines police got involved and searched his house. They found a class ring, clothing for small individuals in him, and other suspicious items. They found more after discovering that the ring belonged to a missing boy and found a witness who had claimed Gacy had admitted to killing over 30 people. He was arrested and used an insanity plea in hopes of not a guilty verdict. It did not work and he was found guilty. On May 10th, 1994, he was executed by lethal injection. Some of the things that the police officers did were correct, but according to the textbook, they also did some things that were wrong. The first thing they did wrong was not looking into John Wayne Gacy after the parents were pleading with the police officers. Usually the police officers, if they ever have a witness or victim's family asking about looking into someone, usually they always follow up and look into that person, especially considering that Gacy should have been investigated because, number one, he was the boss of the missing child, and usually you always go to employer's boss or co-workers to ask about him and his personal life and everything else. Also, he had a reputation and a history of young boys in prison. The second thing they did wrong was when the boy back in 1977 claimed he had got kidnapped and molested by Gacy and told the police they should have looked into it. All they did was just write up a report and never followed up on it. Usually whenever you write a report, sometimes it can get lost underneath other reports, but eventually they always follow up on it. But in this case, they never did, which in serious statements like these that have sexual assault and whatever else, and kidnapping involved. Usually, police officers should always take this more seriously, as it could lead to more dangerous things later on in the future, in which this case it led to a serial killer like Gacy. The trial process for the killer clown. Due to media craziness over a serial killer killing as many as 33 people, the defense requested a change of venue from Cook County. The judge decided that the jury would be selected from another county 9 miles away, Winnebago County. Then the jurors relocated to Cook County for the duration of the trial. The first time in Illinois history a jury was impaneled this way. The prosecutors called up 22 family members of the victims onto the witness stand. Gacy's employees were also there to testify against him for sexual advances he had made towards them and also directing them to dig out parts of his crawl space where he used to dump the bodies in. Other witnesses described his confession, which also included his rope trick to kill his victims. The medical examiner also stated that Most of the victims had died from strangulation. Gacy's defense attorney stated he was mentally ill and should be institutionalized. The first defense witness was the boy who had gone to the police stating he had been kidnapped and sexually assaulted by Gacy. He was describing the way Gacy sexually assaulted him and how it was so animalistic and beastly that Gacy could not control himself. The defense team took a gamble and hoped that what he was recalling about his case would support their plea for mental incapacity. But as he was restating what had happened to him, he vomited on the stand, and the plan backfired, as the jury realized that if this man could be vomiting right now after multiple years of what happened to him back then by John Wayne Gacy, then this is how all the other children that had been sexually assaulted by him had felt. They also realized how awful these crimes were. The prosecutors then made a rebuttal and had a medical examiner look into John Wayne Gacy about mental incapacity. They found out that he had a personality disorder but never experienced moments of temporary insanity. They used the construction of the crawl space for burying bodies as evidence against Gacy, stating that he had us all planned out and never had insanity or mental illness. Then, after the rebuttal, the jury deliberated for an hour and a half and ultimately decided guilty verdicts for John Wayne Gacy. At this time, it made him the most convicted for most murders in U.S. history. The next day, the jurors deliberated again and voted for the death penalty against John Wayne Gacy. He spent the next dozen years on death row before being lethally executed in 1994. Two questions I have about this case is how, after he was found guilty of sodomizing two young boys and arrested for 18 months, how he was able to be around young men and boys again and have his own construction business. I feel like having that prior history and crimes, that they should have some type of restraining order for him against the young boys. The next question I have is how he had killed so many people without ever getting caught. Usually